Welcome to TruthIsWhatMatters.com. I am your host, Brad Snell, and with my co-host, Ray Luff, we hope to get the truth that really matters. And we do have a very special guest on the show tonight, and I'll let my co-host Ray introduce him. Ray?
Yeah, this is Dr. Harold McCarthy, and he was a high school teacher in the Newmarket area, and later in life he got his Bachelor of Theology, and then he ended up becoming the Dean of Humanities at Canada Christian College. And he headed up a creation science organization which put out literature to counter the teachings of evolution. And then a little bit after that he joined me in another creation organization where we both worked on the same board to do the same thing. So he's the most expert in the room right now on this topic. That's why we brought him.
He's more qualified than me sitting here. He should be hosting the show.
That's right. So we're hoping to turn it loose to him a little bit later in the program.
Well, I'd like to talk to you first, Ray, about the state and religion, because recently Premier Dalton McGuinty unleashed some sort of a verbal discharge, I like to call it, about him telling the Catholic Church who's in charge. The provincial government, not the Roman Catholic Church, is the higher power when it comes to running Ontario schools, says Premier Dalton McGuinty. Now, that's a pretty broad accusation to say that the provincial government, not the Roman Catholic Church, is the higher power. Now, it seems that this says the government's the higher power, and they're going to, I guess, govern or tell people what not or what not to believe, especially when it comes to the Catholic Church and funding.
Yes. One of the things that I've said at the website, if you read some of what's written, we're talking about some of the things that we write at the website, but if you don't also read the articles we put there, you won't get all the details. But one of the things that I've said is that if we do not believe in the supremacy of God, then we end up in a situation where we believe in the supremacy of somebody that we elect. And so Dalton McGuinty just reflects his religion, which is secular humanism. And under that religion which prevails in our country today in Canada, we end up in a situation where the government thinks they're supreme. Now, our Constitution actually says, whereas we recognize the supremacy of God, it says that right in our Constitution, most of the way the government is practiced doesn't recognize the supremacy of God. And certainly statements such as Dalton McGuinty go against our country's Constitution. So he's made a constitutional statement, and the newspaper should be picking this up and saying that he has defied the Constitution of Canada, but wait and see how many will do that. We're doing that tonight. We say he's done that. Now, regarding the school system, there was a day when the school system was called the Protestant school system and the Catholic school system. Mm-hmm. And then there was a time, almost 100 years ago, when creation was taught in the schools, but it was decided it would be allowable to teach the alternative evolution if the teacher thought that he had that conviction. Right. Well, today we've come to the point where it's disallowable to teach the Christian point of view of creation, and but the history of how that came about is we've slowly, like the frog being warmed up in the water, we've gotten boiled as far as teaching the truth, and the false science of evolution has been being taught instead. And that's why I've asked Harold to come later on. Now, what I'm trying to point out here as well is the school system eventually became the public school system instead of the Protestant school system. Now we have the same thing happening to the Catholic school system. They will be forced to become public instead of being Catholic as time goes on if they allow the government to have control on them. And it may be that it's a good thing that they end up becoming private again, as a private school system, as Dalton is challenging them.
What is this about they receive $7 billion annually in taxpayer funding? Now, I did not know, Harold, that they received that much money in taxpayer funding the Catholic schools.
Yes, that was brought in by Premier Bill Davis just before he went out of office. Mm-hmm. He had promised to the Catholic Church that he would bring in legislation to give them equal funding from right through grade 13 at that time, or at least 12. Up until that time, they were only funded up to grade 8, the elementary level. But that's what he brought in, and that has remained since his day.
Well, there's so many troubled schools, especially in downtown Toronto, where they're closing up and there's lack of attendance. Now, I believe that is through funding from the government that they're not able to maintain the certain amount of ratio, students ratio to teachers that they need to carry on the school.
Yeah.
Is there a problem with the funding in the public school system now, since you're a retired teacher?
Well, the public education has always been quite expensive, and the government has, as far as I can remember, I was involved with some fights with the government years ago in the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation, and then the whole Ontario Teachers Federation, all the Federation of Teachers, back in the middle 70s when they tried to legislate a cut in funding. Mm-hmm. And about 120,000 teachers walked out, and it was largely at my instigation, actually, and one or two other teachers at Bradford District High School where I taught, and they rescinded that legislation. But I pointed out to our teachers, which in Simcoe County, that about 65 to 80% of the cost of public education is teacher salary. Mm-hmm. And Bill Davis at that time said he was going to cancel all provincial funding to the school systems if they had a budget, I think it was over 3.75% of the year before. And inflation was about 13 or 14%. So obviously he was cutting or freezing teachers' salaries. It's very expensive. The private and Christian schools, faith schools, have great difficulty competing with the public system because it's tax funded. But there's this continual imbalance in areas. The population will grow old in a settled community, and then there won't be many children there, but a few years before they had large numbers of children, so that the school buildings and system have to change. That's one of the problems.
What about this, what's your opinion, I don't know whether you want to have your opinion on this, about this billions of dollars in taxpayer money going to the Catholic schools?
I have an opinion on that. It's just the same. They haven't told you the figure that goes into the public schools, and basically what they're attempting to do is make the Catholic school a public school, and so the funding isn't disproportionate to what is being spent on all the rest of the children in Toronto. So there's no injustice there, but the question is one of control. What the Catholic Church is experiencing now is that the government wants to control them. And that's what the Protestant school system experienced, and it succumbed. And now the Protestant school doesn't allow prayer, the Lord's Prayer, it doesn't allow the reading of the Bible, doesn't admit that it ever was the Protestant school system, now it's the public school system. So what we have is an attempt to make the Catholic school system start going that same route so that the Christian religion can be erased from the schools. But what concerns me about that is at the same time they're setting up, they're giving into the desires to put Muslim type of teaching in the schools. There's things such as classes that are teaching the children to learn what it would be like to be a Muslim and to go and visit a mosque, and there's all this interest in bringing other religions in at the same time as stopping the heritage religion of our country, which is the Judeo-Christian faith.
But don't you think the diversity of different religions can all learn from each other? Or are you kind of saying they're sort of separated right now? I think if you've got a diversity in religions and a diversity of people, if they all come together, shouldn't they gather all some knowledge from each other and continue on?
The problem is that almost universally now, with our fast becoming totally secular society, that most religions and faiths and philosophies are tolerated quite well, but the Christian faith is not tolerated anymore. Mm-hmm. They will not allow Christian students to pray in the schools or have a room to pray in the schools or Bible studies in the schools generally, but they will allow Muslim students quite often to do that and other faiths. And it seemed to be sort of a reverse bigotry, a reverse prejudice kind of situation that we're in, which isn't fair.
Well, I was talking a little bit off camera about when I went to school. They had the Lord's Prayer when they started off, and everybody had a version of the Bible. And now that was back, I guess, in the early '60s.
Well, that ended in 1976, Brad. Yeah, I remember that quite well. And they said all we needed from now on was a thought for the day. We didn't have to have a Bible reading or the Lord's Prayer or the national anthem in the morning.
Do you think all this computer games and as you said, the information is out there for everybody to look at, but do you think a lot of young people are dummied down by all this internet access and too much information overload?
Yes, I get the impression that though we are bombarded by more information than any generation in the history of mankind, that the information does not seem to connect with most of the students, as far as I can tell. When I ask them concerning historical chronology and events and cause and effect in history, I often find that they're totally at a loss. Although it's been presented to them, there's never been a chain of connection to really cause a comprehensible relationship between cause and effect through history.
Because I remember also when I went to school, not too many people had computers, not too many people had access to the internet, and you used to love going to the library and look up things and sit with a bunch of people and brainstorm each other's, especially around exam time. I guess you must experience it as well when you went to university.
Yes, indeed. Yes. The library was a great institution, part of our culture, wasn't it? And it's fast disappearing as that, although the source of information are quite amazing.
Well, I want to just touch a little bit on one more thing before we go on to the next subject. And this is recently an Ontario Public School Board's decision to ban distribution of Gideon Bibles to its young students has unleashed a torrent of threatening calls and hateful emails directed at trustees. Now, some messages to the Blue Water District School Board, which covers Owen Sound to Tobermory, express racist sentiment and questions trustees' patriotism. So it looks like, to me reading this, that the Ontario Public Schools, they want to ban distribution, as we just talked to, of this Gideon Bible. And I don't know what kind of compromise they're going to make that, probably none, but it doesn't sit very well with the parents that have been brought up in a different society as well.
No, I think that's another example of people showing a tolerance for many things, but not for Christianity and not for the basis of Christianity, the scriptural writings. And we are losing our Judeo-Christian base as a result of it. It's rather startling. I know in Simcoe County, where I taught for many years, that they will only allow us as Gideons to go into the schools and give out Bibles if the principals have obtained a letter of permission from the parents for their children to accept a Gideon Testament. And usually lately we've been getting somewhere around maybe 7 or 10 children out of a class that would obtain those permissions, sometimes less, sometimes more. But we used to be able to go in and let everybody have one. I mean, as you say, surely it's good for them to know, to have access to the information concerning biblical writings and Christianity. But it seems to be a stance against this today in our society.
Well, I'd like to ask Ray, what is the difference between the Gideon Bible and the New Testament for a lot of people who really don't know?
Sorry, I'm just sort of chuckling a little bit. The Gideon Bible is a New Testament, Brad.
Okay, well there you go.
You will find in the hotel rooms that they're full Bibles.
They are full Bibles,
yeah.
Yes.
But they attach for the children, they attach the Psalms and the Proverbs from the Old Testament. Yeah. And they also explain the basic core teaching of the Bible in a summarized way in the notes at the front of the Bible. And they basically challenge students to, if you've never read the Bible in your life, that you should read it once during your lifetime. And I recommend that to anyone that's watching this podcast as well. Quite often, as you grow older, you're going to form opinions about religious people, Bible people, whatever. Why not know firsthand and then have intelligent opinions and make an intelligent decision whether that that the faith of the Lord Jesus Christ in Christianity is for you.